I'm going to show you how to start using ArcGIS by showing you the tools available to explore and understand your data. By the end of this lesson, you should have a good sense for the exploration tools available to you in ArcGIS, the identify tools, the find tools. You'll have a basic understanding of how to select data and look at the attribute table, and you'll have a basic ability to look at metadata in order to figure out what your data means. I'll also show you how to create folder connections so you can add more data to your map document and how to add base maps to provide context for your data. So to begin with, the data we're looking at here is a data layer of protected lands in the state of Illinois in the United States. It's a little hard to see what's going on since we're looking at it at such a small scale without any context. So let's just zoom into an area and kind of pan around and explore our data a little bit. A really basic tool available to us as we're beginning our exploration of our data is just to right click on a feature and click Identify. And over here, the Identify pane will fly out or a window will pop up and we get all of the attribute information of the feature we just clicked on. So in this case, the attribute table has pretty good names that are very clear, and I can see information such as the name of the manager of the land, the owner name, the owner's type, and all sorts of other information. I could do this again on another feature as well, and the Identify pane will update and give me the information about that feature. I like doing this via right click so that I don't have to switch tools to the Identify tool, but if you're going to be doing a lot of this, you might want to use the Identify tool and switch there, and then I can just click on any feature and bring it up. The other thing to note is that the Identify tool highlights the feature you just selected in green. Sometimes when you have a lot going on in a map, or if you're looking at it at a scale where you're really far out, it can be tough to know if you're clicking on the right feature. So the nice thing is that it highlights the feature you just clicked on to help let you know if you clicked on the feature you intended to. The Identify tool is helpful, but sometimes looking at a feature in isolation isn't as useful as looking at a collection of features together to compare them. Maybe I want to see all the attributes of some nearby features to know what's going on there. To do that, the quickest way is to use the selection tools available in ArcGIS. So I can move up here to the Select Features tool and I'll click on it. And I can just click and drag a rectangle here, and it's going to select all of those features for me. And if I right click on the layer and go to Open Attribute Table, it'll bring up the entire attribute table for the features. But down at the bottom here, I can see 11 out of 6,000 selected, and I can toggle it so that it only shows the records I just selected. All of a sudden, I can go take a look and compare different attributes across all of these features. And if I'm wondering which polygon is which, I can still click on one of them and it's going to just highlight it for me both in the attribute table and on the map. Looking through the attribute table a little more, I might not understand what they mean by some of these fields, either by the name, primary designation type, or what they mean by protective management area, land, lake, or river. Same might go for lots of these other attributes in this attribute table. I will say that this data table is much better constructed and named than many you will come across, but it's still reasonable to have questions and not understand what you're looking at. That's what we're dealing with right now. So I'm going to close the attribute table and I'll right click on the layer again and I'll go to data and I'll view the item description. This is going to bring up the metadata, the data about the data we're looking at, so that I can go look up what those mean. And the metadata gives us the actual name of the data set, not just the name in the table of contents. It gives us some tags and a summary and a description. But if we scroll down and keep scrolling down and keep scrolling down, eventually we get to all the information about the fields in the attribute table. And for each field, it will give us the name or the alias and then a description of the field. Some of these descriptions still require that you understand some jargon or industry information or other in order to understand them. I don't know exactly what it means when it refers to MSL here, but let's go find a description that is really thorough and would describe the field to you even if you don't know a whole lot about the data set or what it's describing. So there's a field down here about gap information. And if you didn't know what gap status code was, the field description is incredibly thorough. And it starts by telling us that the gap status code is a measure of management intent to conserve biodiversity, and then goes and breaks down what each different type of gap status is. This is really useful when you don't already understand the data set, and it's best practices to create this kind of information on your own data to help others work with it. Unfortunately, more often than not, this data is missing. Due to time and pressure constraints, people don't usually create this data. I don't create it as often as I should myself. Still, the item description, the metadata, is a first spot to check when you don't know what's going on in a data set. It may help explain the information to you so you can continue to work with it in a valid way. Okay, let's move on from here, and let's use the find tools to find a state park that's a protected area in here. So if I go up and click on the find tool here, I get a dialog, and let's just try putting in state park and find, and down at the bottom here it gives me some results in my currently visible layers by searching the attribute fields. And let's just bring up this collection of state park polygons down here, and I'll click on one, I'll hold shift, and I'll click the last one, and now I can right click and go to zoom to, and I can close this window here, and now I can investigate these polygons related to this state park. To begin with, I think I'll add a base map so that we can provide some context for the area. So I'm going to go up to the Add Data menu, and I'll click on the down arrow here and Add Base Map. I'm going to choose Imagery with Labels in this case, and I'll click Add. And when my base map is added, I can see that the state park seems to cover kind of a forested area in the middle of what looks like it might be agricultural or just open space. And just like before, I can click on the Identify tool and open it up and see what's going on with this data. And right now, let's just say I'm interested in how big the state park is. This big polygon does cover most of the area of those other polygons too. And so I can scroll down, I can see the shape area. This is in the units of the data's coordinate system. You don't know what a coordinate system is yet, but in this case, it's in square meters. So we're looking at about, 13 million square meters. So that's about 13 square kilometers, but say we wanted to get it in miles or square miles without doing any math to do it. We could go back and collapse the Identify pane and use the Measure tool to get a sense for the area. And I'll select Measure an area, and under the units, I'll select area, and I'll select miles. And then I can just go over here and start selecting corners for the area I want to measure. And the nice thing is it's going to snap to the vertices of the existing polygons here. So it'll help me get a more accurate reading. And if I didn't want to do every single boundary here, I can just kind of approximate different parts and just skip some areas. And we'll get an area that's pretty close to what it should be. So right now it's showing 13.7 square kilometers. That's about 13 kilometers still, and gives us a general sense for the size of the area. Okay, so let's close out of that. I'll hit escape and close out that window. And now I want to add some new data to my map document. So I'm going to click the Add Data button here. It's going to bring up a dialog, and it can take me to this area called Folder Connections. ArcGIS doesn't necessarily just let you access data on your hard drive directly right now. And so you have to do what's called creating a folder connection. And I do it with this button, Connect to Folder. And if I click it, it'll pop up a dialog for me that lets me create a folder connection. I already have one, so I won't do it, but you would browse through and find the folder that has your data in it. So mine's in my code folder. And then I can create a folder connection to there. And we'll see right here that that's where I have one. So I'm going to cancel out. Once I had one, it would take me into that folder. And I can then go find data just as I would normally on my hard drive. And so mine happens to be in this folder, and I can add the National Land Cover data set here. And all of a sudden I get this raster data set added, and I don't know what it means anymore, right? Just a bunch of colors on my screen. Once again, we're in that position of needing to explore our data to figure out what's going on. So to begin with, I'm going to lower this in the table of contents. So I'll move it down, and now it's under my protected areas. And for now, I'll turn off my base map to speed everything up and turn off the reference layer too. And that way I can zoom around without waiting for data to download. One thing, so just right off the bat, it looks to me like whatever's red is probably roads maybe, but then I don't know what's going on in here. We get these clusters, but these straight lines here look very human made, right? But I don't really know what these colors mean. I can expand the symbol table here, but it's still just numbers and colors. So let's do what I told you to do before and take a look at the metadata. Let's see what it had. So I'll right click again and I'll go to data, view item description. And unfortunately, we get kind of a whole lot of nothing in terms of the relevant information we need in this particular data set, in this copy of it, my copy of it. I happen to know that if we went online, I could figure out what all these numbers meant, but let's not do that for now. Let's just explore as if that didn't exist. Since we have access to the satellite imagery, I'm going to turn our base map back on and turn the reference back on. And look, right over this pink area here, I get the name of something. And let's zoom out even a little further and see if we see a pattern here. And yeah, in the rendering, we see what looks like maybe they might be towns have these little pink areas there. Let's go over here to this big cluster. So if I wanted to really confirm this, not just in the time that it's rendering, I could right click on this layer, go to properties, and go to the display tab and click on transparency, and I'll set it to about 50% transparent. And I'll click apply. And yeah, now I can see some of the satellite imagery through it. It's not quite clear enough for me, so let's make it even like 70% transparent. And now we can see just a little bit of the color of the data set we have on top with the satellite imagery poking through. And what we see is what we just suspected, which is that the reddish color seems to mean some sort of urban area or town, and then maybe also roads. We also see this greenish color that seems to be something related to open space out here. And then we see that the bluish color here is water. So it can be handy just to add a base map in and explore your data in the context of it by making it transparent and overlaying it on top and then visually exploring. There are also a few ways that you can do this kind of analysis with the image analysis window, since we're working with a raster data set on top of the imagery here. But since we're out of time, I'm going to leave it to you. I'll just show you that the image analysis window can be brought up from Windows Image Analysis. And I encourage you to take a look at it and bring up the desktop help and see if you can't figure out some ways to explore some raster imagery that way. Okay, that's it for this lesson. In this lesson, we learned how to explore brand new data using the Identify tool by looking at the attribute table and selecting features, and by using the Find tool. We also looked at the metadata in order to figure out what the data means. And then we also added a raster data set and explored it in the context of our base map imagery. In the next lesson, I'll show you how to use the Layer Properties pane to change how your layers are displayed, just like we did when we made the National Land Cover Database layer semi-transparent. The Layer Properties dialog is really powerful and has a lot more options for you when laying out your maps and when exploring it, such as labeling and setting the color of your polygons and things like that. I'll see you in that lesson.